told myself the echo in my apartment was a design choice. Minimalism, I said, like the word could turn bare floorboards into intention. If I stood in the middle of the studio and spoke, my voice would come back a half second later, the way a polite person repeats your name when they meet you. The mattress on the floor had developed a valley where my body slept and worried. The milk crates I called a nightstand still had produce stickers on them. The single lamp cast a cone of yellow like a stage where nothing happened. I'd been in the city 3 months and hadn't bought a chair. Chairs meant expecting company. Chairs meant admitting you were staying. What I had was a cracked phone screen, a part-time job shelving books at the campus library, and a ritual. Scroll until your eyes burn. Marketplace, classifieds, auction apps with cheerful logos. I drifted between them every night the way some people drift in memory. Only I was trying to purchase a future for under $200. The headline found me just after midnight. It was the kind of headline that your brain reads twice, your gut reads once, and both disagree. Moving out sale, entire apartment, must pick up tonight, $180. I tapped it, expecting a blurry catfish of a listing. The photos loaded bright and crisp and full of promise. A leather couch the color of black coffee, oak bookshelves with clean lines, a modern desk with cable holes that promised a better version of my posture, a flat-screen TV that looked like it would forgive me for watching old shows badly compressed. 10 photos total, each more convincing than the last. The text underneath was simple. Everything needs to go by morning. First come, first serve. Cash only. No holds. Address by email. Seller name, Marissa. There are rules you learn in the comments section and during late night story time with friends. Meet in daylight. Bring someone. Share your location. Count the legs on furniture to make sure the fourth isn't a hand. I knew them all, and I was fresh off a paycheck that felt like instructions to try and fail in small amounts. I hovered over the message box with a thumb that could either save me a trip or start a new kind of life, then typed anyway. Hi Marissa, I can come tonight. I can take everything. I have cash. Alex. The send sound in the email app is too cheerful for midnight. It's a cartoon whoosh, like a paper airplane sailing over a sandbox. I almost laughed at it, then set the phone face down and stared at the ceiling crack that resembled a river where it meandered and then vanished beneath the plaster. The reply arrived before I convinced myself to forget it. Glad you're interested. First come, first serve. Address attached. Come by after 10 p.m. Please don't be late. I have other buyers asking, but I'll hold it for you if you're serious. The email ended with a pin on the edge of the city, where the bus lines turn mythological. A road I didn't know, crossed by another I didn't want to. The smart part of me, the part that had developed a taste for the phrase "we can wait," typed, "Great, see you then," and hit send. There are nights you willfully step over your own common sense like it's a sleeping dog. You tell yourself it's fine because you whisper it. You tell yourself a story about resourcefulness, about being the kind of person who finds treasure in places other people are too afraid to look. It's alarming how persuasive that story is when your apartment feels like it might blow away if you exhale too fast. I put on a hoodie and dragged a thin envelope of cash from the freezer, where I hid it from myself and potential burglars who liked frozen money. I texted no one, not because I'm brave, but because I didn't want to write. I'm driving to the edge of town after midnight to buy a stranger's entire apartment for $180. and see those dots appear like a slow diagnosis. I told myself I'd update someone once I was on the way back, which is a promise people make to the air. The hallway outside my unit sounded different at night. The elevator, which whined during the day, breathed in measured intervals. Someone's TV bled a laugh track. Somewhere a radiator knocked in code. The building did that thing old buildings do. It kept breathing for you when you forgot. Outside, the city had put on its late uniform of wet pavement and sodium light. My car started with a cough and a decision. The GPS warmed up, dotted my route in a line of blue I would follow like a certainty, until it began to die, where the lights did. I pulled away from my curb and made a choice I would later tell myself was inevitable. On the freeway, the city's lights flattened into a smear and then fell behind. The road unrolled like a confession the night wanted to get through. My phone signal faltered, steadied, faltered again, and I watched the bars the way primitives watched fire, as if it were a god that accepted bargaining. I told myself that signal bars can't save you from bad choices, and then watched them anyway. We are all two people when we drive alone, the one who lectures and the one who listens with a hand on the volume knob. I exited onto a 2-lane road that trusted you to mean what you said with your headlights. The air inside the car got colder without the temperature changing. It was the cold that creeps in around certainty and loosens it. Trees moved closer to the shoulder like gossiping witnesses. The GPS still knew where I was going, which felt like a good omen until I realized it would keep knowing, even if it didn't want to. A right turn took me past a faded sign that used to announce the limits of the city, and now just asked a question. Old Quarry Road. Private drive. If the road had shoulders at any point, they fell off. Gravel clicked under the tires in a rhythm that wasn't quite musical. Branches brushed the car roof in soft, exploratory touches. The house arrived like the answer to a problem I'd been too tired to finish. It sat back from the road with one upstairs window lit, and a porch light that snapped on when my headlights found it. The rest of the windows were dark squares, a calendar of unlit days. There was a for sale sign half pulled from the ground. The realtor's number had been scratched to anonymity. It was the exact kind of detail you swear you'll mention later and forget when you need it. There were no boxes on the curb. The bay window held the silhouette of a couch. The silhouette matched the one I'd memorized from the listing. It looked heavier in person, the way some words do. I tried to text. Here. The message spun and then shook its head. I put the phone back in my pocket, opened the car door, and stepped into air that tasted like lemon cleaner in winter. The doorbell was a real bell. It made a cheerful sound that didn't belong to any night. A sound like a child's toy on display in a glass case. I can only tell you that because it happened. If you were here, you might not have heard it, because you'd be thinking too hard about the chain on the door, and the breath fogging in front of you, and the tiny sound your hand makes when it falls away from a doorbell, like it is embarrassed. The door opened on a chain, 6 inches of suspicion. A face slid into the gap. Marissa looked like the kind of person a to-do list writes about. Efficient eyes, hair pulled through a cap, tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. "Alex," she said, and I heard my name land like an experiment. "You're actually here. You made good time." "Traffic," I said, as if the night counted as traffic. "I've got the cash." Her gaze flicked once to the pocket where my hand rested, and came back to my face without changing. She unhooked the chain. "Come in," she said. "Shoes off, please." I just mopped. Inside, the house was nicer than the listing promised. Staged, almost. The couch from the photos sat precisely where it would in a magazine, angled toward a TV that watched you back in the reflection. Shelves empty but clean. A desk with a chair that suggested posture could be rented. The air smelled like lemons and something wetter. A high note of thunderstorm that hadn't happened yet. "You weren't kidding," I said, because that's what your mouth says when your brain is busy putting sticky notes on the walls. "This is a lot." "It's an apartment's worth," she said. "Like the listing said." Her smile was a line drawn with a ruler. It didn't reach the eyes and didn't apologize for that. I walked the room like a person visiting their own future. I touched the couch. The leather felt unexpectedly soft, not slick. A line of staples under the dust cover ran in perfect order until the middle, where they looked newer, a little too silver. "Did you reupholster this?" I asked, a small voice pretending to be a larger one. "No," she said too quickly, then softer. "Not me. A red flag is only a flag if you let it mean something. The living room's light had a lacquered quality that flattened things that should have had depth. It's a detail I am giving you. It's a detail I didn't use." "We can settle up after the first load is in your car," she said. "You don't want it now?" I asked. "I want to make sure you can carry it," she said, and the tone wasn't unkind, just practical, like she was asking gravity to be a reference. "I brought a car," I said. "Seats fold down. I can do a couple trips." Her mouth twitched. Not disappointment. Arithmetic. "A couple trips is fine," she said. "We'll start with the couch. Then the desk and TV." "We?" I said, smiling so she would correct herself to "you." She didn't answer that part. "Walk through?" she offered, and we moved through the house while it listened. The hallway was too long by a foot, in a way you can't prove. The kitchen window reflected the room at a slight delay when you looked at it from the corner of your eye. A single glass dried upside down on a folded towel that was cornered with military attention. Couch, shelves, TV, desk, chair, bed frame, mattress if you want it. "It's clean," she said. "Kitchen table and chairs. Lamps if you need them." "You said you're moving in the morning?" I asked, the way you ask a person you're pretending to know. "I said that," she agreed. "For work?" "The desk is lighter with the drawers out," she said, opening one, then closing it with 2 fingers when she saw what was inside. I had seen it too. Forms with black rectangles where the lines should be. A name peeking between. Nathaniel Corver. I decided to be the person who hadn't seen it. Back in the living room, she crouched at one end of the couch and nodded for me to take the other. "Tilt back," she said. "I'll take the feet. On 3. 1, 2. We lifted on 2. The couch was heavier than it looked. Not, "This is quality heavy," but "You are moving a sleeping person and don't want them to wake." Heavy. Something inside slid with a wet sound, like a bag of sand wrapped in fabric. We didn't talk while we carried it. Words felt like the kind of thing that might change the weight. We bumped a door frame and heard a delayed thump from inside the couch. Not the sound of wood knocking wood. The sound of a reply. I froze. "Did you?" "Keep walking," she said, and her voice wasn't sharp or panicked. If there was a way to be patient and urgent simultaneously, she found it and used it on me. Outside, the porch boards felt watched. Insects paused and then resumed like a choir that had to find its note again. The night turned my breath into something I could hold on to if I needed a different kind of proof. "If this is stuffed with gold," I said, because jokes are easier to carry, "I'm not giving it back." "It's not gold," she said. At the car, we angled it and shoved and angled again until it gave in to geometry and slid into the hatchback like a decision you only had to make once. The car settled. The suspension sighed like an old horse. A small, patient knock came from inside the couch. 1, 2, 3. I coughed to drown it, which did nothing except prove to me that it had been there. "We'll do the desk and TV next," she said, taking the envelope with one hand while scanning the tree line with the other. "Keep the engine off while you're inside. It wastes gas." "I wasn't going to," I started, and she was already walking. The sentence ended up on my shoes. When we re-entered the house, the air had changed. It wasn't cleaner or dirtier. It felt used, as if someone had been breathing it while we were gone and had done a poor job of putting it back the way it was. A framed photo that had faced the room when I arrived lay face down on the shelf. I picked it up on instinct and was about to turn it over when Marissa said, "Leave that." Her tone pinned my hand to the air. She added, "Please." And I set it back the way I found it. We passed a door in the hallway I would have sworn wasn't there before. It had been painted the exact color of the wall with the same finish, so the eye slid over it. It stood ajar the width of 2 fingers. The air that lifted from the crack smelled damp. I heard a long exhale from the wrong part of the house. "Is that where you keep the free gold?" I asked, because someone had to. "We don't open that," she said. "We," I said. "You and me," she said, "as long as you're here." She nudged it, and the door eased against the frame but did not latch, the way some people close their eyes when they want you to think they're sleeping. Upstairs, the mattress was crisp and tag intact, which should have been a relief. "No stains," I said brightly, because the brain hands out consolation prizes sometimes. "I told you," Marissa said. "Particular." "He, Nathaniel?" I asked. The name tasted like stale breath in my mouth. "We don't have to say names," she said. "It gets their attention." "Whose?" I asked, because being helpful is a reflex that sometimes sounds like sarcasm. She didn't answer that. We lifted the mattress and found the print it had kept. The grid on the underside was clean except for a handprint at the center and a spray of dust. 5 fingers, each too long by one joint. I stared at it long enough for my eyes to redraw it into something normal. "It's dust," she said, "from moving day." Downstairs again, we loaded the desk and TV. The front door rattled once, as if someone wanted to see if the night could learn to knock. Marissa didn't look. "Don't answer it," she said. "Don't look." Bare feet moved across the porch boards, and then stopped near the bay window where the couch had been. The sound of someone turning their head happened with no other body to prove it. Then the feet went away. I pretended to file the moment in a folder called Later. My brain stuck it under my skin instead. We stacked chairs, argued politely over lamps I thought were included, and she insisted were not anymore, and then pretended that had been the plan. The house had fewer places for light to settle. Shadows developed confidence. I thought about the way people at the library put books back out of order, like they wanted to make the world a little less knowable. At the door, she handed me a folded note. "Read this later," she said. "In the city." I smiled because it was easier than asking a question I couldn't finish. "Is this a bit?" I asked. "Read it later," she repeated. Her eyes slid past me to the house as if counting something I couldn't see. In the car, I put the note on the passenger seat and gripped the wheel like it might try to leave. "This is the part where you want me to say I drove fast." I didn't. I drove like a person who wanted to be invisible to speed traps and deer and fates. The mattress hummed on the roof with the particular sound cheap twine makes when it vibrates against metal. The ropes whispered warnings that sounded like they were about me. At a red light near the edge of the city, I unfolded the note because human beings are pulled to the part of the story that says, "Don't." The way the ocean is pulled by a moon, it keeps saying it doesn't believe in. If you see someone in the back seat, do not speak their name. If you do not remember their name, that is good. If the couch breathes, breathe after it. If it breathes out, you breathe in. If it breathes in, you breathe out. Do not match it, do not mirror it. Do not let it teach you its rhythm. I smiled without humor and was about to put it back when something behind my headrest exhaled. It wasn't the vent. It was humid and patient, the kind of breath you would use if you were teaching someone how to breathe by example. I didn't turn around. I didn't have to. The rear window had fogged in a perfect oval, a kissy face pressed to the glass from inside the car. The messengers in my body that deal with panic started running notes between my organs. I heard them drop at least one. I tried to breathe out of time with the breath behind me. It adjusted to me, eager the way a good dance partner is eager. I held my breath and counted until the horizon of my sight started to blacken. The breath continued, unbothered. It inhaled while I should have. When I inhaled in a rush, it exhaled, pleased. The word rhythm roped itself around my chest and tugged. I read the note again through a film of sweat. Do not mirror it. I began to stagger my breaths on purpose, offbeat. The breath behind me faltered, irritated. I did it again. It learned me slower. I moved again. For a few seconds we were at war over a metronome. Blue lights found the car and bit the road. The siren whooped. The kind of relief that floods you when you see a cop was something I'd made opinions about years ago, in daylight. The version of me that drove nights alone and heard breathing in cushions felt something else. The hunger to be seen by a human being in uniform who had to write paperwork about it. I pulled over. The flashlight beam walked up the side mirror, bright as comprehension. He didn't introduce himself. The light did the introductions. All I saw of the officer was his grin sketching itself in the dark. "Evening," he said. "You heading far with that load?" His voice made the word load sound like a nickname. "Home," I said. "Furniture." I tied it down. "Is something wrong?" "You might want to retie that mattress," he said, cheerful. "It's whistling like it wants off. Hazards on. Step out a sec." I did what people do around authority. I complied with the kind of careful speed that reads as respect. The cold met me like a door I had to push to get through. His flashlight swung toward the hatch window and paused. "Huh," he said pleasantly. "That's a nice couch." "You can see it from there?" I asked. and my scalp tightened in a way that made words feel slippery. "Clear as day," he said. His radio murmured a code that had too many vowels to be a code. He touched the hatch release like it was a friend he'd just remembered. "Please don't sit on it," I said, and heard the ridiculousness of the sentence as it left my mouth. "Not me," he said, "just to test the straps." He sounded like a man making small talk with a lake. He lifted the hatch. The couch exhaled. It was a single luxurious sigh, the kind you might make when you settle into something that knows you. The flashlight wavered and went black when the beam touched the cushions. The dark in the car had substance. It reminded me of the color you see with your eyes closed when you've been awake for too long. "Big lungs," the officer said, almost fond. Everything inside me stacked itself and prepared to be a plan. I slammed the hatch. It bounced. I slammed it again. It latched. The officer took 2 steps back, not in surprise, but to give the night a better angle. He leaned toward the glass and smiled like a person who had chosen a side and wanted you to notice. "On your way then," he said. "Drive careful, Alex." "I didn't tell you I started." The flashlight clicked off. Wherever he had been, he wasn't anymore. I didn't wait to find the end of the sentence. I got in the car, started the engine, and drove until I was back in the city, where the air grows thick with other people's plans. My building looked cheaper in relief. Lights from different lives stacked on top of one another. Somebody laughed 3 floors up. Somebody else did dishes with sincere clinking. The elevator had chosen tonight to prefer stairs. I untied the mattress and slid it inside my door with a series of shoves that would have looked like determination to anyone watching. The couch came last. It was heavier than when I left the house, and also helpful the way an old dog is helpful. It leaned where I needed it to lean, paused when I needed air, slid into angles like it remembered stairs. By the time I got it into the studio, I was sweating in a way that felt like all my pores were voting against me. I placed the couch against the window and watched the room transform. An apartment can look like a decision if you give it something to sit on. The desk went against the wall where the outlets made sense, the TV on the stand that made it look forgiving. The shelves waited, empty but promising. The room held light differently now, as if it had been shown how. I sat on the couch because it was there. The leather felt room temperature, like skin. It made the smallest sound, a pop you could mistake for upholstery settling, or a bubble in something viscous. My body arranged itself the way bodies do on a couch, as though it had been waiting its whole life for this exact invitation. The city outside hummed a lullaby of buses and conversations, the sound of 100 unremarkable lives lining up to protect mine. I woke to knocking. 3 soft taps, not the door. Somewhere closer, not quite under me, but interested in being there. "Hello?" I said. Humans announce themselves in empty rooms because silence can't be trusted to be polite. Silence. Then the same 3 taps. A patient repetition. I looked down at the cushions like an idiot who expected them to grow a mouth and explain themselves. "Furniture settles," I muttered. "Everyone knows that." Saying it turned the idea into a superstition. The couch inhaled. It wasn't loud. You could have missed it if you wanted to. It pulled air into itself, and the apartment adjusted around the loss like a shirt slipping on a hanger. The note lay on the coffee table, unfolded like a hand. I covered my mouth with my palm, as if that would hide my teeth. Do not mirror it. I forced my lungs into an awkward rhythm. Short inhales when it exhaled. Long exhales when it inhaled. A dance with a partner who insisted on leading. It got bored or frustrated or both. The couch deflated a fraction with a sigh the room pretended not to hear. I moved to the mattress, which felt safer because it was higher by 2 inches. That's the kind of math I was doing. I slept, then dreamed the oldest dream. Water. It was an ocean. Of course it was. But the ceiling was also a surface I could press my face against and look through like glass. Waves rolled in made of leather. Staples glittered like fish. A tide pool reflected rooms I'd never lived in, and faces that looked at me from the couch as if watching me through the TV. Someone sat there in the dream room. Not Marissa. Not anyone I knew. And turned their head toward me with eyes bleached white by overexposure. "Don't say my name," the person said. Their mouth didn't move. The words entered my head and said they had always been there. I woke at 3:13, which is a time that makes meaning even if you didn't tell it to. The radiator ticked in Morse that I couldn't read. The couch knocked again, but the pattern was different. 4, 2, 1. 4, 2, 1. A countdown or a dance step. I counted along and hated myself for it. "I'm returning you tomorrow," I told it. It helped to be petty. There was a single answering tap. Agreement or sarcasm is a flip you only do once. I slid down the wall and sat on the floor with my back to the door, so nothing could come up behind me from the hall. The note had lines on it that hadn't been there before, possibly because I hadn't needed them yet. "If it knocks from inside, smile. Do not show teeth. If you show teeth, it will learn your mouth." I smiled like a person practicing a lie in a mirror, while their cheeks cramped into grimaces that would convince no one. The room gave a satisfied hum from underneath the floorboards, the way a cat approves with a rumble. By daylight, the apartment had the nerve to look normal. The couch had lint on it. The TV displayed my reflection with contempt. Nothing in the room suggested that night had happened except for me. I texted Marissa with thumbs that wanted to keep the words, "Hey, I think I need to bring the couch back." She replied instantly. No returns. Serious question. I texted, "It's not working out." "The house won't let it," she typed. "Your house?" I wrote. "Wherever it is," she responded. I stared at that for longer than it deserved and typed a question mark like a teenager, which I am not. There was a pause long enough for the radiator to tick a word I decided was patience. Then, check under the dust cover. Every bone in me shook its head. I turned the couch over with the cowed obedience of a person doing something unwise because a stranger on the internet told them to. It was easier than the night before. It gave me angles it hadn't had. The staples down the middle looked wrong now that I wanted them to. They had a different mouth on the metal. I pried them out with the flattened end of a screwdriver and felt each ping like a vote against my future. There was a slit the size of a wallet at the seam, too neat to be accidental, too recent to be original. Inside the cavity was a still life, a black and white photograph curled by time, a single house key on a ring that had worried a circle into it, a bundle of hair bound with red thread, and a printed listing on cheap paper. Moving out sale, must pick up tonight. Different email address, older date. Years settled on the page like dust makes a white line around the base of a long-placed object. My phone buzzed. Close it before it looks back at you. The apartment seemed to lean toward me. The slit breathed, an opening throat. The leather above dimpled where something pressed toward a chance. I slapped the dust cover shut with both hands and felt the heat of my palms go into the couch like I'd woken it. I drove new staples with the butt of the screwdriver until the muscles in my hand sent up a protest. The couch shifted in the way a large animal shifts when it has decided not to stand up yet. The air steadied the way a room breath steadies when a crying baby finally sleeps. I left the couch on its back until my nerves remembered first principles. When I flipped it, it landed with a sound that felt less like furniture and more like punctuation. I sat on the floor opposite it, both of us in daylight, and tried to believe that light's job was to explain things. The listing on my phone was still up when I checked. It might have been another. I couldn't tell anymore. The language was the same. The price varied. The promise didn't. I hovered over the report button and didn't press it, because pressing a button doesn't make a system believe you if the system is bigger than buttons. The note lay beside me. It had one more line at the bottom in a hand that didn't look like Marissa's or mine or anything I teach myself to read. Thank you for carrying me. I sat very still for a long time because motion seemed like something the couch would appreciate. Outside, the city did what it does. It continued. A bus sighed. A downstairs neighbor laughed. Someone's dog walked them. The couch waited with serial patience. Waiting is a kind of intelligence. I tried to remember whether I had ever been taught to wait by anything that loved me. I couldn't think of an example. By noon, the apartment had a decision to make about who it belonged to. Things determined that in ways we pretend to understand with receipts. I ate crackers standing up because eating sitting down felt like an offer. The couch reflected me in the television screen like a dark wave pressed against the glass, waiting for me to match it. I breathed out of time until the rhythm in my chest felt like a song I had learned badly on purpose. When my phone finally found full bars and decided to participate in the world again, I typed to Marissa, "I'm bringing it back tonight." The words assembled on the screen and displayed their confidence. There was a long pause, and then a reply that contained nothing I could use the way you use information. "We don't open the basement," she wrote, "and we don't say names. If you're going to bring it back, drive with the windows cracked, so your breath has somewhere else to go." I stared at that and thought of the breath on the hatch window, and the officer whose face I never saw, and the ways a house can be more than a house. The leather creaked, a friendly sound if you wanted it to be. I didn't. I didn't sit. I didn't nap. I didn't clean. I watched the couch like a person watches a shoreline where the tide has gone out too far, waiting for the water to remember itself and rush back in. When I finally stood, my legs shook like I'd been caught doing something I wasn't supposed to. I lifted the note and put it in my pocket because I am exactly that type of cautious fool. I stood closer to the couch than I meant to, and tried very hard not to count my own breaths. I said, "You're just furniture," out loud in a room that had already corrected me once. The couch didn't answer. The apartment did. It sighed in the way spaces sigh when they are being polite about grief. The light shifted in the window, the street outside brightening to afternoon. I did what people always do at the end of the first chapter of a story they wish they hadn't entered. I stared at an object that had changed shape by the force of my attention, and told myself I was still the person I had been before I touched it. The couch waited, with time and memory and whatever else it carried stapled inside. The note warmed in my pocket. The city put its hand on the small of my back and reminded me that forward is not the same direction as escape. I breathed offbeat, the way you do when you're trying not to learn a song that's already in you. The couch did not breathe. That was almost worse. I spent the rest of the day practicing the failure of matching it. When night came, I would drive. When night came, the road would suggest a direction. When night came, names would do what names do when they are spoken in the wrong place, to the wrong mouth. For now, daylight. For now, a couch that looked ordinary in every way that matters, until you ask the wrong question. For now, a room that, whether I liked it or not, had learned to hold two kinds of breath at once. By noon, the couch had learned my apartment. It knew where the light went at different times of day, and where the floor bowed by a millimeter. How the radiator's ticking made a sentence if you didn't blink. I kept telling myself I would move it back out as soon as the sun slid a little more west and the traffic thinned. I said this aloud, because sometimes the only thing that keeps your thoughts from hardening is air. Marissa's last text kept shining from the screen whenever I forgot the phone on the counter. We don't open the basement, and we don't say names. Drive with the windows cracked so your breath has somewhere else to go. I didn't have a basement. My building was cheap brick and thin walls. It had laundry in a room that smelled like pennies and soap, but no basement I could claim as mine. So I told myself she was speaking in metaphors, and then I didn't. There are warnings that dress up like poetry, and warnings that arrive naked. The difference is mostly confidence. I cracked the windows. The air moving through the apartment felt like a relief I hadn't earned. The couch's surface cooled a few degrees, as if it had been considering a fever. In the afternoon, a neighbor knocked. She was the kind of neighbor who never used your name but always remembered your apartment number. She held a package that belonged to me, like it might teach her something about me if she stared hard enough. "You got furniture?" she said, peering past my shoulder the way people do when they want permission to gossip without the work of asking. "Yeah," I said. "A couch." "Good for you," she said in a tone that meant, and good for the hallway noise too. "Smelled like lemon this morning." "I mopped," I lied. She nodded as if that confirmed a suspicion. As she turned away, her eyes flicked to something behind me and widened a fraction before the muscles of her face remembered what to do. "Don't put it too close to the heater," she said, and left. When I closed the door, the room didn't change. It was already what it was going to be. The couch sat with the kind of patience that makes you wonder whether you're keeping time for it, or it for you. I tried to lift it. The night before, adrenaline had lent me a temporary version of myself who could do that. Now the couch resisted like a person trying not to be woken. It tilted to a precise angle I hadn't asked for, and paused, as if waiting for a cue I didn't know how to give. I told myself, fine, we'll do this in pieces, and slid it forward inch by inch with a towel under one foot to protect the floor. The door to my apartment was 6 strides away. On the second stride, the room felt longer. On the third, the couch's weight shifted forward hard enough to make me stumble. I let go, and it settled with a sigh, perfectly centered under the window as if it had never moved. "Okay," I said. "You win." If the couch answered, it did it by rearranging silence. I had work at 4. Shelving books felt obscene, normal, fluorescent, abrading against the edges of everything that had happened. My brain tried to make small talk with itself. I watched a man in a brown coat stand too long in the history aisle and thought of names you shouldn't say. I told my boss I had a headache and went home before the sunset finished, convincing the sky to change color. Back in my apartment, the light had gathered in strips on the floor. The couch had learned those too. I stood in the doorway longer than people stand in doorways. The hallway behind me narrowed in a way only nerves can measure. The cracked windows let the city in. Car horns, a dog with opinions, a bus inhaling at the stop across the street. My breath felt like a person balancing on a curb. One step into traffic, one into safety, pretending the curb is a choice. It started with a sound my brain put in the wrong category. The soft scrape of wood against wood. Not my door, not the floor. A door that belonged to a different place in the building. The kind of heavy door that won't open unless you want it to. The sound came from my wall, right of the window, where there was nothing but beige paint and the sound of my upstairs neighbor's television when he couldn't sleep. The scrape came again, then the thud of a door stopping against its frame the way a palm meets a body in reassurance. I watched the wall the way you watch a stranger in a subway car. Head forward, eyes sideways, a pact with your own reflection. There was a door, not a hallucination, not an impression, a door where there hadn't been one. The paint matched my wall so perfectly it might always have been there. It was narrow, as if the room had been storing a secret in bad posture, and finally stood up. A brass knob sat at a height that would make you reach slightly higher than comfortable. It had no keyhole. It had no trim. It had only a seam around it that was too clean to have been cut today. No, I said aloud, meaning, this is not here. The door disagreed with a gentle competence. I walked toward it without intending to. The couch appeared in the corner of my eye like a person at a party you don't remember meeting but suspect you have. I looked at the couch so I wouldn't touch the door, and then looked back at the door, because it had grown bored of being polite. From behind it, a sound like a person exhaling into a paper bag. Not quite breath, not quite wind. The pressure of a room that has been waiting. The note in my pocket warmed. I pulled it out and found a new line I couldn't account for if I wanted to be the kind of person who accounts for things. If you find the door, let it open first. I don't have a basement, I said to the empty air. The sentence sounded churlish. The door opened the width of 2 fingers and stopped on something that wasn't visible from this side. The smell that found me was lemon and something older. The air inside that crack had a weight you feel behind the eyes. My tongue filled my mouth. Saliva pooled the way it does when you think you might throw up. I pressed my lips together and remembered. Do not show teeth. The door's opening felt like a mouth practicing a smile. I didn't open it further. I didn't need to. I could see the first step. Stairs going down where there was no down to go. Close stairs, as if the house had been forced to grow a spine in a hurry, and it chose from cheap parts. The treads were painted black and scuffed to gray where feet had learned them. The handrail was wood polished by friction and hope. Marissa, I said, and caught myself, and said, hey. Then I texted her because people who say they don't want to be alone mean they want to be accompanied by a specific voice. and hers was the only one that had spoken within the rules I had. The bubbles appeared and vanished. When the reply came, it felt older than typing. It's there. Don't go far. Keep your windows open. Take the key if you have to go. Be gentle with your breath. I had the key from the couch's gut in a dish by the door, next to my own keys and the quarters I used for laundry. It was a house key without teeth, a blank that had been worn into purpose by a lock that knew how to eat metal. I held it and felt how warm it was. The warmth belonged to my hand. I told myself that twice, like the first time had been a rehearsal. I didn't want to go down. I also didn't want to keep standing at the edge of a choice until it decided to do the choosing. I put my shoes on because rituals have force. I left the front door unlatched because I didn't trust the sound the chain made. It felt like a name. At the top of the stairs, the air tasted like the moments between sprays of a humidifier in a kid's sick room. I thought of my mother's house where the basement had a painted floor and a freezer in which we stored several kinds of future. This wasn't that. I took the first step. The kind of squeak that draws apology out of you on instinct came from the wood. I said sorry because the stairs felt sentient, and then laughed once because I was the kind of person who apologized to non-living things, and the category had started to wobble. On the fourth step, the door behind me breathed. I turned to find the apartment as it had been. The couch sat perfectly placed. The windows were open. The curtains considered motion and decided against it. If I had closed my eyes and believed very hard in the regular world, I could have gone back up and called the landlord to ask about maintenance. I kept going. The stairs had a bend that didn't fit in the geometry of my building. I took it sideways, palm on the rail, trying to make myself small among the walls. At the bottom, the basement opened into a shallow room that continued into a deeper one. The shallow room held nothing but a switch on a pillar. It was the kind of switch that tells you a lot about the hands that will touch it. A fat toggle, paint slopped, more stubborn than dangerous. I flipped it. The light came from a single bulb in a cage. The filament brightened like a person learning their name again. Beyond the shallow room, the deeper one arranged itself. It wasn't my basement. It wasn't my landlord's. It wasn't any buildings I'd been inside. It looked like a composite. A section of poured concrete. A patch of dirt tamped flat. Boards stacked in the corner that smelled like old attic. A slop sink stained a brown beneath the drain that suggested mineral or blood or both, depending on how far you wanted to go. And there were things. Not junk. Not treasures. Offerings, maybe. A milk crate with manila folders inside. A row of photographs pinned to a string with clothespins. All black and white. All of the same object. The couch, in different rooms. The light falling across it in different ways that didn't matter as much as the way the couch took the light from each room and made it the same. A jar with red thread. A glass tumbler drying upside down on a towel that wasn't mine. A for sale sign with the number scoured off. On a shelf behind these, a small cassette player. Gray plastic. Wide buttons that promised to stay pressed. A label in neat printing. Corver. N. The name made a spot on my tongue ache. I almost said it out loud because names have gravity and everyone thinks they're wearing cleats. I didn't. I pressed play. The hiss belonged to a different decade. A voice arrived through it like a boat through fog. Calm, male, educated in the way the world is always suspect of. If you have this, it said, it's because you carried it. Thank you. The gratitude felt like my note, echoed. It will try to teach you its breathing. Don't learn. It will knock a pattern until you hear words in it. Don't answer. It will make doors where there are no doors. Those are not exits. I stopped the tape before it could say more, because my eyes had found something in the deeper room that insisted. A couch. Not mine. An older cousin. The leather cracked at the arms and smiling in stitches. It sat at a slight angle to a wall of unfinished cinder block, the way you find the best place to see your own TV. It had an indentation in the middle cushion, as if someone had just stood up. The dust cover gaped a little. The staples held it shut like exhausted hands. "Hello," I said quietly, to it or to the room. The couch looked like it had lived several lives, and all of them had scuffed its corners into new meanings. The smell near it was not lemon. It was salt. There was movement above me in my apartment. A footstep that belonged to my upstairs neighbor if my upstairs neighbor had learned how to walk around in my body. The basement didn't echo upward. It absorbed. I went back to the tape because the voice had the confidence of someone who had lived long enough with labels to write one for himself. I pressed play again. "There is a basement in every place it sits," the voice, Corver, said. "It prefers houses, but it is not particular. Any room will do if the room is willing to pretend." A long exhale, not from the speaker, like he'd moved the microphone and it caught the breath anyway. "If you are listening down there, I am sorry. We were supposed to carry it out before dark. We were not supposed to smile back." His voice paused the exact length of a memory. "Rules," he said. "No names. No matching. No teeth. A laugh that didn't want to live. You'll think that's poetic until you understand its anatomy." I looked back at the wall behind the couch. It had been patched with something that didn't belong in a basement. Not plaster, not mortar. It looked like something that used to be flexible and had been asked to harden. The patch was the size of a face. Another sound cut through the tape. Not from it, from the stairs. A socked foot. A careful foot. A foot pretending to weigh no more than a sound. "Marissa?" I said, before my mouth could put a different word there and give the room a mouthful of me. No answer. The foot descended another step and stopped. The tape played on, tired of my interruptions, and uninterested in whether I would live to hear the end. "It leaves things," Corver said. "Keys, hair, photographs. That's not sentiment. That's a map. It keeps a piece from each place because a house is a story you can carry if you make it small. The ad is the mouth. The price is bait. The person on the other end of the email is real enough to get you through the door. After that, it does its own correspondence." I turned the volume down. The socked foot turned into a shoe, and then a boot, and then went away, because it had never been there. My hand shook in the capable way that gets work done. I stopped the tape. I looked around the room for evidence I hadn't imagined any of it. The milk crate of folders had tabs with dates. Years. They didn't start long ago. They started around the time the world put itself on sale. Each tab had a name crossed out with a different pen. Not one of them was mine. I flipped to the oldest and found a receipt, a photograph, a note in handwriting that might have been the first I saw in my pocket, or might have been the template. "Thank you for carrying me," it said in the same naked grammar. I put the folder back because my hands had begun to behave like hands in a museum, too aware of context to be free. I went closer to the older couch because I felt disloyal not to. The dust cover lifted when I touched it, as if it had been waiting for the permission of skin. Inside, another key, another bundle of hair, another printed ad. The address wasn't in my city. It wasn't in my state. On the far wall, something like a calendar. Not months, not days, not numbers. Square outlines penciled in and then erased. The pencil had bit into the drywall through the paint. A line from the calendar led to a triangle I recognized as Marissa's house. Another line had been drawn from there to my building. A rough square with a dot in it. The dot had been smudged with a finger until it looked like a bruise. I didn't notice I was breathing with the room until the room stopped. It's a trick of fatigue or fear, or a third thing. You fall into lockstep with your environment and call it peace. The part of me that had read the note like a prayer jerked me out of it. I forced my lungs into a rhythm that felt like a bad dancer in the corner. The basement resisted a fraction, and then let me go. When I went back up the stairs, the door tried to close slowly, polite as a butler, then stopped at the 2-finger gap of its own rule. I didn't force it. I stepped into my apartment, and the air felt new and weak, like a patient on the back porch while the nurse changes the sheets. The couch in my room hadn't moved. It had, however, developed a new confidence about how much of the room it owned. The light from the window lay on it, as if it had been paid. The television reflected it at a slight distortion. In the screen, the couch curved a fraction more than in life, as if the glass had learned a different version. Marissa called. The phone said unknown, but it was her. "Tell me you didn't go far," she said. "I went down," I said. "There's a basement in my wall." "Of course there is," she said. "Did you take the key?" "Yes." "And you're breathing by yourself?" "I think so." "Good," she said, and the relief in her voice was colored with a disgust that wasn't for me. "Listen, don't bring it back tonight." "You told me to drive with the windows cracked," I said. "I can be there in 40 minutes. "If you bring it back," she said, "you bring the house with you. You'd just be adding a room to my place I've been trying to keep closed." "It's already here," I said. The door opened. The basement in my wall. "That's not your basement," she said. "It's the basement it drags around like snail shell. The only way it leaves is if it likes the new one better." "So what am I supposed to do?" I asked. I hated the way the question made me sound. I hated how many answers I would accept. She didn't speak for a long moment. In the silence, I heard the slight reverb of her room, larger than mine, emptier now, recent rug indentations trying to rise. "It stays," she said finally, "until it decides, or until it learns you wrong." "Learns me wrong?" "You have to breathe off beat," she said. "You have to never smile with your teeth. You have to not say any names. It wants your mouth. It wants your breath. It wants a signature." "I found a cassette," I said. "Corver." I didn't say the first name. "I know," she said softly. "He carried it here once." "What happened to—" I bit the word off before it formed teeth. "You know." "I don't say names," she said. "It's not piety. It's plumbing. Names move air in your mouth a certain way. It likes that shape." I sat on the floor because my legs had noticed gravity again. The couch loomed like a horizon. In the basement there's another, I said. Older. It looks tired. Marissa let out a breath so slowly I could hear the phone app decide it wasn't noise and then change its mind. They collect, she said. Some are real. Some are copies. You don't need to learn which is which. A chair creaked on her end, or a door opened a little to listen. Do you want to know why I posted the ad? I want to know what it wants. It wants to go where air trusts it, she said. It wants to sit in rooms and teach them to be story. A small laugh, wrecked. It wants the world to feel like it feels. Don't you? No, I said, and heard the lie expose itself in the way my throat moved. It's cheap, she said, as if she were talking about a different item. That's why we do it. The price takes away the guilt you should feel carrying it. It wants to be carried by people who think they're getting away with something. I'm bringing it back, I said, even though she had asked me not to. I can't live with a door in my wall. You already are, she said. If you move it before it's done, it will follow you wherever you put it next. But it will remember you made it move before it wanted to. So I wait, I said. For what? For it to thank you and ask to leave, she said. You'll know. I remembered the line on the note that hadn't been there until it was. Thank you for carrying me. It already did, I said. Then it's courting you, she said. That's worse. I waited for her to tell me what to do with worse. When she didn't, I said the thing I had been chewing. Last night a cop pulled me over. No, he didn't, she said gently. He had a flashlight. He opened the hatch. No, he didn't, she said again. It likes uniforms. It likes shapes that tell you how to behave. So what do I do? I don't know, she said, and the honesty was a kindness that hurt. I know what not to do. Don't invite anyone over. Don't sleep on it. Don't feed it names. Don't leave it alone with your breath. How do I have to go, she said. She didn't promise anything. The line went dead. Unknown stayed on the screen like a brand. Evening had pulled itself together by then. The hallway outside my apartment had the low murmur of people starting dinner. A child cried in a burst, and then remembered something better. Somewhere someone's blender made a dependable complaint. I sat until the couch blurred and then came back into focus like it had turned its head. The door in the wall opened another inch. It did it without noise. The kind of opening a person does when they don't want to wake the person sleeping in a room they have to cross. The air that came up from it carried a coolness that wasn't temperature. My windows rattled a little despite no wind. I stood. The key in my pocket had remembered the warmth of my hand before my hand remembered it. I held it and tried to think of any lock I'd seen in the basement. There hadn't been one. The key was for a different lock. Or it was for the version of the lock that existed when you remembered to be afraid. You would think hunger and thirst and other body things would continue during an evening like that. They did. I didn't want them. I was learning that wanting and needing are circles that overlap in good weather and separate under pressure. At 9, someone pounded up the stairwell and laughed too hard. At 10, my upstairs neighbor dragged furniture because he had read an article about the benefits of rearranging for mental health. At 11, the buildings simmered the way old buildings do before sleep begins to stick. The couch was a continent. The door in the wall looked like it had always been there, I took the note, the key, and a small hammer. I don't know why the hammer. I don't own a gun. I told myself the hammer was a symbol of making in a situation that preferred undoing. If there had been a way to move the couch out then, I would have. I tried once more and got the same answer. A tilt to the exact angle that put the most strain on the part of my back I thought of as a weak old friend. Then a heavy kindness that set it down so gently, I almost forgave it. The door welcomed me like floors welcome a person who has learned the shape of the house. The stairs didn't squeak where they had before. The bulb was already lit. In the deeper room, the older couch had shifted the way a person shifts in sleep to make sure you still know they are there. The tape was where I had left it. I pressed play again, because listening to someone else speak in a room like that is the same as asking for company. If you have to take it apart, Corver said, it will let you think you are winning for a while. Don't cut. It likes being cut. It likes learning your hands. It will not bleed in a way that scares you. It will bleed in a way that educates. I turned the tape off. I pulled the dust cover on the older couch anyway. It came away with the ease of old Velcro. Inside the cavity, air that smelled like the ocean in a place that had never met one. A folded paper the size of a wallet. I opened it and found a printed map of a city not mine. A dot in a neighborhood I had never seen and never would. A note in the same grammar as mine. If the door is tired, sing to it. I don't sing. I hummed a note I thought of as a note. The door, my door, the door, in my wall upstairs made a sound like a throat trying to swallow. The bulb overhead flickered without going out. The older couch, not mine, exhaled a smell that was almost a memory. If you had ever fallen asleep on a couch, while someone you loved did something in a kitchen. I sat on the bottom step and rested my head against the rail, because the effort of standing in a room that wanted me to do something, without saying what was becoming a task. I dozed, maybe. The tape machine clicked when the tape reached the end. When I woke, the note in my pocket had another line at the bottom in the same careful handwriting. If you must carry me again, do it before midnight. I stood too quickly, and the blood left my head and came back like someone's cousin. The door upstairs had opened another inch. I understood then, not with relief but with clarity, that the house, not my house, not any house, wanted another trip. It wanted a ritual. It wanted the thing it always wants, proof that you will move when it hums a note. Okay, I said to the air. One more trip. It was almost midnight. The street outside had found its quiet pocket. Night buses, an occasional car, voices calibrating themselves to concrete hallways, and the fact of neighbors. I propped my front door and angled the couch the way you angle a problem you're about to carry with your knees. It let me. The weight heaved into me like a sick child who trusts you but not gravity. I dragged it into the hall, down the stairs in a series of pauses that made me memorize the distance between landings. On the second-floor landing, I rested the end on a step and breathed wrong on purpose until my lungs learned the wrongness again. A door opened behind me. A man with a beard that tried to be a disguise looked at the couch and at me and at the hour. "Do you need?" he began, and I shook my head because the end of his sentence would be help, and I couldn't let that word happen in the hallway. "Moving it," I said, which was tautology and prayer. He nodded and closed the door with care, as if doing it loudly would make what he saw more true. I took that mercy in and carried one more flight. The lobby was an agreement of tile and lost mail. I shouldered the door open and let the night's breath into the room. Out on the street, a car passed like a thought someone else had. I dragged the couch to the curb and set it with its back to the building so it could look at the street like a tired person watching a parade. "Okay," I said. "Okay, now you go." The couch neither went nor stayed. It waited as if waiting were going. A gust pulled at my hair. The couch inhaled in a way that made the set of my teeth ache. The building exhaled heat from vents at ground level. Across the street, a bus hissed. The night was simile, and I needed it to be literal. My hatchback sat with its mouth closed, and its tires admitting nothing. I thought of the officer with the flashlight. I thought of Marissa counting something beyond me as I drove away. I thought of the key in my pocket that had not yet met the lock it believed in. I opened the hatch and looked at the space where it had been. The rectangle of darker carpet felt like a photograph shadow, the kind that shows you where someone stood last week. The couch looked too large to fit now. The geometry of the world had been edited. "Before midnight," I said, and checked my phone. 11:41. I did the thing you do when logic fails. I asked for help from rules. Windows down. Breath wrong. No names, no teeth. I angled the couch and lifted and slid and swore and apologized. At 11:49, the couch was halfway in and halfway out, and then, in the effortless way water becomes shape, all in. I shut the hatch and did not listen for breathing. I got in the driver's seat and did not look in the rear view. I drove. The streets had learned a different map in the hours since I'd last asked them for guidance. Turns developed where there weren't any. Lights held yellow longer than green to make a point I could not parse. I told myself I would drive to the edge of the city and then point the car in the direction of Old Quarry Road, and if the road didn't exist, I could always circle until it did. At 11:57, the windshield fogged from the inside. I rolled the windows down. The fog remained. A breath behind me learned my cadence twice, and I unlearned it twice. At 11:59, the siren whooped once in the distance. It could have been a memory practicing. At midnight, the car entered a part of the city where street signs chose to be metaphors. The porch light was on when I turned into the gravel. The for sale sign lay face down. The upstairs window glowed with a softer wattage, the way a house breathes after company leaves. Marissa stood in the doorway with her arms folded like a person hugging herself without asking. "I told you," she said as I hauled the hatch open. "Don't bring it back." "It asked me to," I said. "Or something did." "That's not the same as wanting you here," she said, but she stepped aside. I carried the couch back over her threshold, the way you carry a sleeping body over a border that insists on dark humor. It fit the door with a precision that made me feel complicit. Inside, the house had made room for it. The indentation in the living room where it had sat before was warmer than the rest of the floor. I set it down and it sighed in relief that didn't belong to me. Marissa didn't smile. The note in my pocket heated like a stone. "Basement?" I said, and she shook her head hard enough that her ponytail made a sound like a whip being held back. "No," she said, "not tonight." "It's already open in my wall," I said. "It will close if it likes this better," she said. "It will close if we let it think it decided. That's important." We stood with the couch between us the way people stand at wakes. The house adjusted. The air freed a few degrees of memory. "Do you want water?" she asked, out of an etiquette older than this place. She went to the kitchen and came back with 2 glasses. They were the same glasses as in the basement by the slop sink. My hands wanted to trust the vessel, even if they didn't trust what any of us would do with it. "Who is—" I started, and swallowed the rest. She watched the way I swallowed like it was a test she had to grade. "There are stories," she said instead, not answering. "He bought it for real once. Paid a price that wasn't a number. Stayed too long. Forgot how to breathe when it didn't. Some stories say he left. Some say he learned the rhythm and went where the breath goes when it runs out." I looked at the couch. It looked back with the only face it had. "Why not burn it?" I asked. "Why not take it into the yard and make the kind of fire people tell law enforcement about later?" "People have tried," she said. "It burns like a lesson. Then the ash gets up. Then you have it everywhere. You can't carry ash like you carry a couch. It learns more rooms faster." "You talk like—" I began, and stopped, because she didn't deserve the word accusation after selling me a curse I had volunteered to carry. "Like I tried," she said. "Like I still try." She set her glass down with the kind of care people reserve for altarpieces and mothers. "You can sleep in the office," she added. "If you dent the couch, it will dent you back. Floors are safer." "I'm not staying," I said. Even as I said it, the part of me that tries out sentences on futures tried it on this one like a mirror. "Then go now," she said, "while it's pleased with you. It will be angry at me for a while, and that's easier." I should have argued. I should have made a plan. Instead, I stood there a second too long and watched a corner of the dust cover quiver the way a nostril does when a dog decides whether a human belongs. "Thank you," I said to her and didn't use her name. She nodded at the omission. "Leave the key on the table," she said. "It can make another if it needs to." The key resisted my palm like it didn't want the table to learn its temperature. I set it down anyway. The couch took a long, pleased breath in. I matched it by accident and made myself cough to undo the symmetry. The cough pleased it more. Names teach one shape, coughs teach another. At the door, I hesitated because people only get so many decisions that matter, and I wanted to savor a rare one that felt like movement. "You'll be okay?" I asked, and the question felt like something a child asks a parent about monsters under beds. She smiled with her lips only. "No," she said, "but I know the rules." Outside, the night had arranged a quiet that included me. Gravel made little noises to mark where I put my weight. The trees were tired of being metaphors, but did it anyway. In the car, I kept the windows cracked. On the drive back, the city returned to the version where streets connect to themselves, and lights agree on the order they burn. When I opened my apartment door, the wall was a wall again. Paint didn't bulge around the memory of a door. The air didn't taste like humidifiers. The couch-shaped absence in the room felt indecent. I laughed in a way that tried to make it humor. I moved through the room, touching things the way people do after a break-in, to reassert the geography of small objects. The desk, the lamp I had gotten to keep after all, the TV watching me watch it. I exhaled on purpose and counted. Breathing alone felt like theft. On the counter, the note waited, plain, folded at a new crease. When I opened it, there were 2 new lines, one in the old steady hand, one in a newer sloping script I knew only from the way it made me ache. If you carry me again, teach me a new route. If you don't, I will learn you by mouth. I put the note down and didn't breathe for 4 beats. Not because of rules, but because my chest felt like a stranger's shirt I'd borrowed and forgotten to return. I slept on the floor because the bed elevated me, and I wanted no vantage point. I dreamed of rooms with doors that didn't lead to other rooms, but to versions of myself learning to smile differently. In the dream, I held a key that had no teeth, and it made a sound when I dropped it. That was my name spelled wrong. In the morning, the apartment was mine again, like someone had signed it back to me while I slept. The hallway smelled like coffee. The elevator lost an argument with itself and said something out loud in the voice of machinery. The radiator arranged its ticks into a word I had been waiting to learn and decided not to. I checked the listing out of habit or compulsion. It was gone. In its place, a different listing at a different price with a different location, but the same promise. Entire apartment. Must pick up tonight. This one had a name for the seller that wasn't Marissa's, and photos where the couch didn't appear in a way you could call accidental and keep your soul. I closed the app. Then I opened it again, because human beings do that. By noon, my walls had held. The door did not return. The note did not change in a way that I could prove with time lapse. I breathed and tried not to count, and failed a reasonable number of times. At 2, a package arrived at my door. No return address. Inside, a cassette labeled with a different neat hand. Marissa. A single sheet of paper with a sentence. If you can't keep it from learning you, teach it someone else. I didn't press play. Not then. I put the cassette on the shelf next to the lamp that had been included, then not included, then included by default. I stood in the middle of my apartment and listened for a basement. The silence held like a person who knows how to keep a secret and isn't sure you deserve it. I realized then what I had been trying not to. The house hadn't gone anywhere. Not hers. Not mine. The house was the part that moved. When night came, I knew the story wasn't done. That's not the kind of knowledge that feels like dread. It feels like a room you can't see the back of yet. It feels like breath that waits. It feels like a mouth practicing a smile where you can't see it, and then stopping when you look. The 3rd chapter wouldn't be a return. It would be a message. And I had one waiting on a cassette I didn't know how to play without letting the room lean close. I cracked the windows, just enough for air to remember it had somewhere else to go. Then I turned the lights off and sat with the dark, like I meant to learn it wrong. The cassette waited on my shelf all day like a mouth that had decided to be patient. I moved around it, past it, through it. I did the chores of the living, rinsed a cup, folded a shirt, let the kettle boil and forget me. Windows cracked, breath wrong, no names, no teeth. It is terrifying how quickly rules become habits. By evening, a kind of calm set in, not the good kind, the kind that arrives after the first emergency and before the second. The couch was gone, but the room had kept the impression like a body keeps a bruise. The wall held. The paint pretended it had always been only paint. I sat on the floor with the cassette and the player I'd borrowed years ago to digitize my mother's music. The cables remembered where they went. The play button resisted like a decision. I pressed it. Hiss at first, the kind that makes you feel like you're inside someone else's ear. Then her voice, not the Marissa who opened her door 6 inches and smiled with a ruler. A tired voice that had decided to stop lying to itself about how tired it was. "If you're listening," she said, "it means I made you an accomplice. I'm sorry. This isn't a confession because I don't believe it's a sin if the choice is live or burn down a building. It's an instruction and a warning and a letter to someone I won't say the name of." I paused the tape because the sound of her breath between sentences had a way of making mine want to learn it. I waited until my lungs remembered being mine and pressed play again. "We all think we'll be the one to break it," she said. I tried fire. It turned into vocabulary. I tried knives. It turned into anatomy. I tried leaving. It came as a door. There are rules people wrote down because the mouth that lives in couches doesn't like certain shapes. No names. The way your tongue moves when you say a person's name is a key. No teeth. Teeth are doors, and it likes doors that open. No matching. Because once it teaches you its rhythm, it never has to teach you again. She took a breath she must have practiced 100 times to keep from sinking with the room. "You'll hear stories about him. The one who recorded the other tape. He loved a room like a person loves a person. He thought he could make a space safe by knowing it better than it knew him. Maybe he did, for a little while. He carried it across state lines because he believed in the idea of a better basement. It liked that about him. It likes belief." A scrape on the tape, paper moving. "If you can't keep it from learning you, teach it someone else." The sentence landed with the weight of a thing she'd repeated until she hated what it did to her mouth. I hate that. I hate me for saying it. But the only times I got to sleep were after someone else took their turn. I warned when I could. I hid warnings in the listing. I turned photos wrong. I left the price too good. The people who came already wanted to ignore themselves. I'm sorry. The kettle clicked off by itself across the room. The building exhaled heat. The tape continued. "There's a key sometimes," she said. Teeth worn down. "It's not for a lock. It's for the part of you that needs to hold a plan to keep from screaming. Hold it. Put it on a table. Tell it you're in charge. If it listens, fine. If it doesn't, you still have hands." A pause. The kind of pause that might have contained a name she refused. "If you're going to post," she said, "do it before midnight. If you post after, it's not your words anymore." I let the tape run on until the voice became an animal. Breathing, throat clearing, chair creak, a cough that was not a cough. Then I flipped it and listened to the other side. And on the other side was the same message again, as if she knew about the way panic erases the first reading. I turned it off. The room held. I was alone enough to feel the shape of it. I took out paper because my hands needed to be busy. I started to write a warning. "Do not come." The words looked like a dare. I crossed them out and tried again. "This is not a sale." The part of me that has always loved a bargain smiled despite everything. I wrote a paragraph. I wrote a story. I wrote the rules in a list because lists look like help. I imagined posting it as a moving out sale, with the photos wrong, with the price wrong, with the address wrong, with my name wrong. I imagined doing what Marissa had done and hated myself. and also wanted to live. It wants your breath different, I said aloud, because hearing it made it true. It wants your mouth. It wants your house to learn it. If I taught it someone else, who would that be? A person who thought they were smarter. A person who needed a couch they could afford. A person who believed they would be the one to break it. The floorboards under me made the sound of an apology you don't accept. The window knocked once. Not the glass. The air. No, I told the air. And the air had the decency to pretend it had been wind. I sat there for a long time with the tape and the paper, and the choice that thinks it is a different choice if you stare at it long enough. At some point I slept, the way a body sleeps, not because it is safe, but because it is a body. In the dream there was a room without furniture, and a tide rolling across the floor that stopped at my toes and retreated without touching. I knew, in the same way dreams sometimes give you knowledge you carry into waking, that the tide wasn't water. It was breath. I woke to my phone on my chest. A notification. New message. From unknown. The subject line read, in a font the email app chose to look neutral. R.E. Moving out sale. Entire apartment. Must pick up tonight. I didn't open it. I didn't have to. The preview showed the first line of the body. Thanks for carrying me. My mouth filled with saliva as if it were about to be taught a word. I closed my eyes and swallowed with my lips pressed together, profile smooth like a statue. No teeth. No names. Breath wrong. I set the phone down face down as if a face could read that and be ashamed. I did what cowards do and what survivors do. The same act, but described differently by whoever tells the story. I opened my laptop. I opened Craigslist. I opened the post to classifieds page and told myself I was writing a warning in the only place the mouth would read. Moving out sale, entire apartment. Must pick up tonight. Price, $180. Location, not my address and not Marissa's. A corner of the city where I wouldn't be able to tell if the basement belonged. I uploaded photos. The couch in my apartment, but cropped so tight you could pretend it was anywhere. The desk under a light that made it look harmless. A TV reflecting nothing. A shelf empty as a confession. In each one, something wrong in the corner. A bit of tape showing. A clock with an impossible time. Not enough to save anyone, but enough that the person who could be saved might notice. I wrote a description that looked like a description. Moving tomorrow. Have to clear it out tonight. Everything must go. Cash only. First come, first served. Underneath, buried like a footnote no one reads, I wrote, no names, no teeth. Breathe wrong. Don't open the basement. It looked like a joke, the kind people make to prove they aren't scared. It looked like an inside reference to a TV show. It looked like nothing at all. My finger hovered over post. Before midnight, Marissa had said on the tape. The clock said 11:24. I clicked. The page refreshed to tell me to check my email. A link to finalize. Another step between me and whatever came next. I opened my inbox. From Craigslist mail relay. Subject: please confirm your posting. I clicked the link. The page loaded with the ad as it would appear to the world. The photos looked cheaper. The words looked more confident than I had written them. The footnote was gone. I scrolled, heart thudding. At the end of the ad, a single line had appeared where I hadn't written one. Thank you for carrying me. I closed the laptop. The room listened. I thought of Marissa's line. If you post after midnight, it's not your words anymore. I checked the clock again, even though I knew what it would say. 11:27. My phone buzzed. A reply. Still available? Another. Can pick up now. Cash in hand. Another. Here already. Outside. I stood. The building felt crowded with the idea of people. I checked the peephole like a person in a movie who knows the movie is a documentary. The hall was empty. Quiet. Mine. Not here, I said to the idea of the ad. Wrong address. The idea didn't care. It doesn't matter where they go, a part of me realized. It matters that they go. For every horror there is a point where action becomes ritual, and ritual becomes message. I put my shoes on. I put the cassette in my jacket pocket. I put the note in the other, folded at the crease where the sentence about teaching it someone else had bent the paper so many times it would tear. I left, and the building let me. On the corner where I'd put the fake pin, a line of cars idled with that specific posture cars have when they think they're about to be told where to go. People leaned against hoods. The glow of phones under faces made everyone look like they had agreed to the same terms of service. Alex? A voice said from the street, using a name that sounded like mine but not like it belonged to me. I kept walking. I was just another person without furniture. I didn't see the couch in any back seat. I didn't see it on any roof. I saw it everywhere anyway. In the posture of a tall man leaning too far back. In the hunched shoulders of a woman holding a blanket at the ready. In the breath that condenses and waits. I kept walking. Past the pinpoint I'd lied about. Past the block where someone had taped a handwritten yard sale sign to a pole that pointed nowhere. Past the church with the basement that smelled like coffee. Not lemon, thank God. At a bus stop, a woman sat with a suitcase. She had the look of someone who needed a couch like a person needs a friend. Not for comfort, but to prove a home can exist. She looked up when I paused. Is this where? She began, then didn't finish because she had already seen the ad. She knew how the sentence ended. I sat beside her because that felt like the kind of action that could still be called human. The bus sighed its way toward us. I wanted to say everything at once. Do you like free stuff? I asked instead, because my mouth has a way of finding the worst version of courage. She laughed once, kind. Who doesn't? Be careful, I said, and felt the stupidity of advice that arrives after the desire. If you go to a house and it smells like lemon, and there's a door and a wall that wasn't there, and a couch that breathes. I stopped, aware that I sounded like a conspiracy. Just, if your mouth wants to smile, keep it closed. She looked at me the way people look when they are filing someone under unwell and harmless. The bus pulled up. She boarded. I didn't. She sat down and looked back once, not unkind, then out the window at a city that did not care which door you chose as long as you kept choosing. I walked until my knees ached, and then walked back, because the city ends in circles and nowhere. At my building, the hallway smelled like someone had burned toast and lied about it. My apartment looked like a room learning to be a room again. The note on the counter had not changed in a way I could prove. The email continued to ping. Still available. Can be there in 15. Please hold it. I thought of deleting the post. I tried. The link said, "This post has been flagged for removal." Not by me. By who? By what? The ad stayed up. "It will stay up whether you want it to," is a sentence I heard in my head in the voice of a librarian explaining a policy. I turned on the tape again because being told what to do by a voice that couldn't see me felt like something. The first minute had warped. Heat, or something heavier. And her voice stretched. Vowels pulled like gum. "You can't save everyone," it said, not as a comfort, but as architecture. "You can write a message only someone who already wants to be saved will read as a message." I sat with that and let it be ugly. Then I wrote. Not another ad. A letter. I wrote it in longhand, and then typed it, and then printed the typed version, and taped the longhand to it, because people trust different shapes of truth. I wrote the rules in a way that didn't look like rules. I wrote about breath the way you write about weather, so people would know to bring a jacket. I wrote about names like passwords that change the default settings of rooms. I wrote about doors like mouths that open when you practice smiling in the mirror too much. Then I copied it into the contact form on the listing. Every time someone clicked reply, they would get my letter. Most would delete it. Some would laugh. The person who could be saved might read to the end. I did not feel good. I felt like a person who had pushed a boulder from 1 yard into another and left a note under it that said, "Watch your feet." I went to sleep on the floor with the windows cracked and the note under my cheek because it felt like the only thing I owned that knew my heat. The building breathed. I breathed wrong. When I dreamed of a couch in a different room in a different city and someone standing over it with a key that had no teeth and a piece of paper between their fingers that said, "Thank you for carrying me." Days scrimmaged into each other. The ad stayed up, then down, then up again at a different price, with different photos that looked like mine had looked even when they were not. Replies pinged and then stopped. The cassette went back on the shelf. The wall held. The bruise of empty space faded. Once at the library, a man in a brown coat returned a book called Breath, The New Science of a Lost Art. He didn't look at me when he slid it over the counter, but when I stamped the card and handed it back, his fingers lingered near mine as if he were testing the air near my mouth. "Thank you," he said. I didn't ask his name. I didn't smile. Sometimes at night I think I hear a couch exhale in the apartment of the neighbor who rearranges his furniture for mental health. Sometimes I think it's just the radiator. Sometimes I think those are the same thing. Months later, on a Tuesday that pretended to be ordinary, a package arrived with no return address. Inside, a photograph of a couch in a room that wasn't mine and wasn't Marissa's. A different city's light on the leather. A different hand's shadow crossing the frame. On the back, neat handwriting. "We made it to a place with better air. It likes it here. If it knocks, we won't open. Thank you for carrying me." I put the photo in a drawer because displaying it felt like an invitation. The drawer stuck, then slid open, too smoothly, like it had learned something from being near the photo for a second. I took the picture back out and put it between the pages of a book about rocks. Rocks can hold anything. That night the wall in my apartment did not grow a door. The windows let in plain city. The hallway smelled like someone's cooking, and someone else's perfume and the big warm animal of the building's heat. I slept on the bed because chairs mean expecting company, and I didn't. The next morning, because we are creatures of habit and hunger, I opened Craigslist. Not to buy, not to sell, to check if the mouth was speaking near me. It wasn't. It was speaking somewhere else. Moving out sale, entire apartment, must pick up tonight. Different city, different price, same promise. A photograph where the couch didn't appear until you let your eye adjust to the dark, and then it was the only thing there. I clicked anyway. The contact form opened. A letter unrolled in the window. Not mine. Someone else's. The rules were the same. The grammar was new. I didn't reply. I closed the tab and breathed on purpose. Wrong. The breath stayed mine. You want a moral? I want one too. Here's the closest I can give. There are things you carry so other people don't have to. There are things you carry so other people will. Stories are both. I am sorry for what I wrote. I am grateful for what I read. If you've read this far, it means what it always means. You were already looking. If you go, and you might, keep your windows cracked. Don't say names. Don't smile with your teeth. Breathe after it, not with it. If a door appears, let it open first. If a basement offers you a chair, stand. If you find a key with no teeth, you are holding a plan, not a promise. If you are the person who needs the couch because the floor is a decision you can't keep making, I understand. Let me say it the way I wish someone had said it to me. You are not buying furniture. You are agreeing to a room that will learn your mouth. Sometimes that's all a house is. I still have the cassette. I still have the note. I still live where the light in my window is a warm square on the floor at 4 p.m. And sometimes I step into it and stand there like a person who has learned a rhythm wrong on purpose. The room lets me. The air lets me. The story lets me until it doesn't. And then it posts again. If you see the ad tonight, you'll know. You will tell yourself you're just looking. You will tell yourself you're just curious. You will tell yourself this is only a story. You will be wrong in ways that keep you alive. Moving out sale. Entire apartment. Must pick up tonight. The price is a number anyone could pay. The cost is a rhythm. Thank you for carrying me.